AM 950 Radio, Brett Johnson with you here on a Tuesday afternoon. So, there's a big new development in the healthcare industry as Amazon is rolling out and expanding a new healthcare program called Amazon Care, which will provide virtual care visits as well as free telehealth consultations and in-home visits for a fee from nurses and for testing and vaccinations and for nurses as Amazon is entering the healthcare marketplace. So joining us to talk about what this means is Paul Seegert. He is the managing partner at PCS Advisors, which is a health benefits consulting firm with 35 partner offices across the nation. Paul, thanks so much for joining me on the show. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
So what does this mean with Amazon now entering and really expanding their presence in the healthcare market? Why is this appealing for Amazon to be making this move now?
Well, their founder is famous for saying, "Your margin is my opportunity." In healthcare, big players like Amazon and others continually try to get into healthcare because it's such a massive part of our economy. There's so much money to be made. And I always look at these things and say, is this going to be disruption, or is it someone picking up market share or adding a new line of revenue? And I think it's more the second in this case. They do have some new services that will be included, so they're not doing exactly what others have done, but it's similar to what other players have done, like Teladoc, a company that many people have heard of, and most of the big insurers now incorporate virtual medicine into their plans. That definitely blew up during COVID, which is probably partly why they're making this move now. So many people the adoption was, it increased quickly during COVID of this kind of care, and I think it is a lot of what we'll see in the future for primary care. So they're getting into an existing space with their size, their branding. It won't shock me if they become a pretty dominant player.
Yeah, and that's where I wanted to go to next, is how do they compete in this type of market, especially when you look at many health insurance companies, as we were just alluding to a second ago, also entering kind of this telehealth market as well. So what does Amazon need to do to try to separate themselves from some of those competitors and try to gain a foothold?
Yeah, I think they're targeting employers. That's smart. Employer health plans are going to be employers who run large health plans, I think, are the fix, are the solution for this massive problem we have in the way that we pay for healthcare and how inflationary it is. And really aggressive employers in terms of managing this expense have come to realize that they need to separate oftentimes the primary care function from the rest of the functions in a health plan. Must be a fire nearby my office there, but they've got to separate primary care out, because when it's incorporated in with the rest of the health plan that you typically get in a retail insurance product, the primary care doesn't get to operate the way that it used to as a source of preventive medicine and guidance to a patient. They have to crank out so much volume in terms of how many patients they see in a day, and they really end up being really more of an entry point for that patient to get to a specialty where real billing occurs than what they were intended to be, which was the folks that would guide us through, living a healthy life and so on. So I think those employers are going to be how they scale. They've already signed up some significant employers in the country, some of which they own, but some that they do not. And I think that's going to be the scaling point.
So what sort of impact could consumers or employees of some of these companies that might use Amazon Care as a part of their healthcare package, what sort of impacts could we see for consumers? How could this be helpful or maybe not so helpful for them?
Yeah, I think it'll be helpful in that we can get more convenience into the mix of how we access healthcare. You have people that simply put off care because of how inconvenient it can be, and the designs of the health plans that we've arrived at, in many cases, unfortunately, discourage people from accessing care. So I think what we could see, the positives would be that it's easier to access, more affordable to access, more convenient to access, in terms of the fact that they'll send, if it becomes evident on a virtual visit that you need to be seen in person, they'll even send someone to your home. They're going to expand that to 20 markets, 20 large city type markets this year. So I think that has a positive. because a lot of folks put off care. So if we can slow that down or reverse that trend, there's some real positives for the overall marketplace.
So what are some of the biggest challenges Amazon is going to face as they really enter a new sector of a market right now, really ramping up, getting up into the healthcare market? What sorts of challenges might they face?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that really makes me scratch my head and say, wow, how powerful is this health insurance business model that we have that runs the way that we all pay for healthcare in this country, that you can have companies like Amazon's made prior attempts to get into the space. Berkshire Hathaway has made attempts. JP Morgan Chase has made attempts. Google has made attempts. Some really major players have made attempts to get into this business and bring more free market forces and competition and drive more value for the consumer. And many of them have fallen by the wayside. And they're up against a really powerful band of companies, the Blues, United, Cignas, Aetnas, Humanas of the world, the pharmacy benefit managers, et cetera. So I think the headwind is going to be the opposition they face from the existing way that these big insurers that run the way that we pay for health care today.
So from the perspective of a big insurance company, how could they find that to be more beneficial to perhaps use Amazon Care and contract with them rather than doing something internally on their own end? Because I imagine that has to be kind of part of Amazon's business model too, is getting some of these health insurance companies on board with them as well.
Well, at this point, it appears to me that they are going direct to the employers around the insurers. And so that's where we're going to see this thing really play out. For them to have a real impact that's positive for all of us as consumers, they are going to need, in my opinion, they're going to need to do it without the insurers. The insurers are obviously not going to want to see that reduction in revenue that's flowing through their model. So you're going to have it's going to be a very interesting 6, 12, 18 months that we watch here to see, are they successful in doing that? Can they get momentum with more and more employers and essentially carve that portion out of what those employers use insurance companies for?
And really, if you look at a company like the size of Amazon, they might have the resources to be able to enter this type of market, because I imagine, really, if you're not a company that's as big as Amazon trying to compete with some of these health insurance companies that already offer their own telehealth services, I imagine if Amazon can't do it, it's probably going to be very difficult for any other company to try to successfully enter this market.
Yeah, that's why we've had really just such a slow pace of change. And I think I'm optimistic actually in the conversation of the way that we pay for healthcare. I think we're at an inflection point where employers have taken about all the inflation they can in terms of the cost of healthcare that they provide to their employees. And when you combine that with the reality employers are facing with the Great Resignation and the toughest hiring environment in 15 years, they can't just continue to shift cost and increase payroll deductions to their employees. So I think we're at a real moment of hopefully positive change where these employers say, hey, this is not working for us. And they really think differently and approach this thing differently. And they start to carve some of these things away or out from the traditional insurance model and take more control over it.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch over the next few months and even years to see how Amazon ends up performing with their new healthcare program, again called Amazon Care. Well, we have been speaking with Paul Seegert. He is a managing partner at PCS Advisors, which is a health benefits consulting firm with 35 partner offices across the nation. You can learn more about them at pcsadvisors.com. That's pcsadvisors.com. Paul, appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today about Amazon and Amazon Care.
Have a great day.
All right, let's take a break and send things back over to Matt McNeil on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.